Hello, YouTube universe. This feels weird because, I don't usually do stuff like this. But, and I'm just gonna do this because, that's how I feel, comfortable with right now. But, okay, so today, what day is it today? Today is April 21st of 2020. It's currently Tuesday, and it's 10:28 p.m. So, I guess I'm more doing this because in a way I kind of want to keep a record, but then also I I don't know, I just feel like this could be important, maybe useful to some people. It's useful to me more than anything, I guess, if I want to just get thoughts out here. But yeah, so okay, so as of right now, as of when did this all start? COVID-19. I'm touching my face. I guess it started mid-March. This coronavirus thing started spreading across the earth, and supposedly a bunch of people have been killed because of it. I have a lot of thoughts on that. Let's see, well, I think it's kind of well, I think it's partially a lot of fear that's being used as a tactic to keep people scared and easy to control. I don't really know what people's the government's, I guess, future plans are or whatever. But I guess since I'm documenting this or whatever so yeah, it's at least I'm living in the US. I'm living in Berkeley. I'm from LA originally. I am 30 years old, and so here in Berkeley it's very interesting because people are going out to parks. We're running. Tomorrow is going to be the 22nd, and there's going to be a mandatory you get to wear your face mask kind of thing. I get to be Darth Vader. I am your father. But yeah, so that's gonna go down tomorrow in Berkeley. There's people, well, there's I guess there's a curfew supposedly that starts at 8 p.m. and also there's letters that essential workers have or are carrying as proof of them being an essential worker so that they don't get fined. I haven't really looked into this, but that's something that's been circulating around. But yeah, I'm currently experiencing some interesting things. So I took shrooms, or I did shrooms, I want to say about 2 weeks ago or something, maybe 3. I'm looking at my journal because it's here somewhere, the date for that. So I'm kind of doing that and stuff like that right now. Where is it? Where is it? Okay, here it is. Okay, so it was on the 3rd of April. So yeah, it's probably 2 or 3 weeks now. 1, 2, 3, about 3, yeah. So that's there. So it was really interesting though because I had this experience of there was a moment where I like really saw that I've always wanted to be in like a really beautiful life. Like if I wanted to be alive, I would want to be alive in a world where color and beauty is present. And I know that sounds really weird to say considering the fact that we're in 2020 and like, I don't know, like I feel a lot of people kind of look at me or hear that phrase like, live in a world where there's color and beauty. What, huh? Isn't there color and beauty already? Well, I think that depends on the person. I mean, if you're constantly in your head, it's kind of hard to see beauty sometimes, I think, even though it's right in front of your face. But yeah, one of the things that I experienced was I experienced myself as beautiful, and like for a good moment and a good chunk of the day, I was like, wow, I'm here to be alive, and like I get to be me, and that's actually really cool. Like I'm here for that. I'm here for the sole purpose of being myself. So that's pretty cool. And it's also interesting because aside from the, I guess like that, it was just a really high feeling. Like it was a feeling of like, of being able to see myself for once in my life and like not being ashamed of that, not being ashamed of who I was. And I would say that there's another instance in my life where I kind of had that actually, no, I did have that experience exactly actually, except that it wasn't on any drugs. It was just out of pure involvement with other people, like pure involvement with people who believed in authenticity, trust, unity, love. And that was about 3 years ago. It was this group called MITT. And yeah, it's a pretty good, actually pretty great group of people. Yeah. And it's funny though, because like back then, I thought they were a cult. And I thought that like, that, I don't know, that they just wanted to suck me in, you know? But like the funny thing is that like when your ego is in darkness and like that darkness doesn't allow you to see. And I guess for me, it doesn't allow you to see the truth. For me, that like it's like, okay, I guess if I can like relate it to words right now that make much more sense, it would be like, if you are down here and you're hanging down here and this is where you usually live life, when you see someone up here, it's kind of weird because you're like, whoa, who's that person and why do they think that they can be up here? And like that's just really strange. Like, why is this person so actually happy, you know? And like it's funny because I think that a lot of unconscious people, I'm gonna include myself in this because I think I'm conscious-ish. So I would say a lot of unconscious people are here, and so like when they see something here that's bright, it's like light, right? The bright little light, when that starts to creep into the darkness, it's like this darkness kind of gets scared, and so the darkness being kind of like the trauma in your mind, or like the ego aspect of your mind, the dark side of the ego, where it's like the one that's trying to protect you because it's scared. It's like, oh, there's light, that's weird, like let me make it into something bad because I can't explain it, and I can't allow this into my cracks. I can't allow it to shatter my paradigm of who I am and who I think I should be, and and that just looks wrong. And so like something that's really good can actually be perceived as something that's dangerous and threatening. And I think that was the case for me. And so like I think that that's a large part of what's going on right now. Actually, it's very interesting because so I want to say that like a good chunk of people in the world, they've been traumatized by one thing or another, and like that traumatization, is that a word? Is like something that inhibits our growth. But I also feel like that traumatization is like, it makes for such a nasty dynamic where people are literally using each other to gain power or take power from each other whenever they feel pain. And the way that I've seen that in my life, I guess, when I was very unconscious, it was by like literally pushing people that I loved into a corner where I didn't really give them an option to like to be there for me, or like for me to be vulnerable with them. It was more like, no, you stay in that corner and that's where you're going to stay. And if you don't stay there, then I'm going to hurt you. And hurting someone meant like emotionally or physically. And like, that's what darkness does. So anyway, I feel like this whole thing is partially like this construction of like trying to keep people down. And there's a lot of manipulation involved. If you are into the spiritual realm and like woo-woo stuff, like I am, I think around 2017 is when I heard about something called the event. And I was like, the event? Like I kept on seeing this thing called the event. And I was like on YouTube and stuff. And I was like, what the fuck is that event? Like, what is the event? That's weird. And I think the event's here. I was having a conversation with my sister earlier, and like we were talking about how it seems a little weird that, you know, people are getting, you know, money from the government. The government's thinking about extending that financial package. There's talk about rent and mortgage being not needed to be paid. And I don't know about anybody out there, but it makes me kind of feel like there's something that I don't know. There's something that I'm not getting information about that is being kept from me. And so my sister kind of like brought up the point of, right now, I don't think people should be paying for anything. And I had told her how I was kind of reading this little pamphlet that I got sent in the mail about my my stimulus check and like how the terms and agreements that I can like use that money, and like for some reason the idea of like me using that money and being in this economy, because at the moment the economy is collapsed, but I mean we're not seeing the repercussions. I feel like I'm not an economist or anything like that, but like I mean it feels like that. And so I kind of was telling my sister like, this is weird because you know I'm being given finances to carry out my life, which is nice. I like it. I love it actually. Um, but I'm being handed like finances to like buy things with, and I'm like, well, how long is that going to be able to go on for? You know, and then a part of me is like, well, I'm by by using these finances, like I'm operating within the same system that's already broken. So it just kind of gave me like this kind of feeling of I kind of don't want to be a part of that, you know? And then we started talking about um, how would we be a part of something different? Or like, how would we create something different? And for me, I know it's possible to create something different because things have been created out of nothing. So when somebody says something like, yeah, but like what? I'm like, yeah, it's a great question. I don't know, but like, I know it's possible, you know? Because I mean, anything, everything that's been put on this earth, it's been created out of nothing. Like the Wright brothers, they didn't know how to fly, and they were bicycle mechanics, but they did it. You know, and people who didn't really believe in them were like, oh, they only got that thing up for 10 seconds. You know, but they were kind of like, dude, we got this thing in the air for 10 seconds. That's kind of amazing, you know? So, anyways, in this conversation with my sister, I was trying to push for the stance of like, yeah, something can happen and we don't have to be part of this, but we just have to determine what value, what what would be the new currency? What would be the new value? And you know, we talked about gardening and like we had this really well, I thought that it'd be interesting, right? If like there would be a way of stopping what's going on in this country even further by putting like a freeze on, for example, food production. Like, there's a lot of immigrants who are working out there on the fields and who are harvesting food for us to eat and things like that nature. And, you know, I'm really thinking about, so what would it be like if, you know, people who wanted to, actually, you know, like came up with some sort of plan and were like, hey, you guys, field workers, if we actually supported you in doing something like not working because we could somehow, like, and you guys just didn't go to work and food stopped, what would that mean? What would that mean? I mean, you know, like you'd have to think about how they would be supported in terms of like emotionally and financially and um, something in that whole package. But I mean, that would be I think that would be like, in a way, really cool. Really scary, but really cool. Because, I mean, imagine, like, where would that leave most people who are very dependent on the way that this whole economic system works to feed themselves and sustain themselves? Like, that's scary. But at the same time, I feel like it could be very, very invigorating and powerful, because, I mean, it's a shot at developing our own autonomy, and we wouldn't really be at the mercy of government if we knew how to do things ourselves. And I honestly feel like the people would have the power in this case if we just were like, nope, stop, just stop, just everybody stop. So that's kind of one thing that's floating around in my head, or maybe a lot of things. I guess another one would be, I read this quote the other day that said something that when you depend on reality, I don't remember what it was, but it was like something about when you depend on reality, everything is false. And then when reality depends on you, everything is true. No, it was, when you don't understand, you depend on reality. That's what it was. When you don't understand, you depend on reality. When you do understand, reality depends on you. So there was that. And I was like, whoa. And then that kind of tied in with this other thing that I saw on Instagram that was talking about the subjective and objective realities. And from what I understand, it seems like subjective is like the way in which you as a person experience reality. So through your eyes, right? And then objective is like actually what's actually going on, what the actual thing is. And so that actually got me to this guy. Yeah, so this blue book thing, this is a work by a philosopher in the 17th century, and like his name is Spinoza. I hadn't encountered him until like 2018, December 2018. It was kind of like one of those scenarios where, like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I mean, I haven't really read all that much since then, but so yeah, it's one of the things that we've kind of talked about, or that's been presented, is the 4 levels of perception. And the first one would be hearsay. The second one would be experience. And the third one, I want to say it's reasoning. I'm not quite sure how to put the third one. And then the fourth would just be like knowing. Yeah. But up until this point, I mean, I've kind of discussed this with another friend too, of like how there hasn't really been any steps towards awakening. Awakening. What does that mean? So I think that awakening just means to become more conscious of your awareness. I don't think it's something that happens. I mean, well, let me take that back. It's something that happens. Like, I definitely think that there's events that can, like, kind of burst the bubble that you're in, that blinds you from recognizing your awareness. But I think that once that happens, it's kind of a process, and I know that for me it's been difficult to actually sustain that process and actually figure out like what's going on, because when the bubble bursts, I think there's this, like, it seems like there's this little time period where I don't know, I guess you just kind of like, you're kind of lost because you don't really know what's going on. And then you talk to other people and you just keep on hearing like this whole thing of like, oh, like I had this awakening, or like I had that, or like whatever. And like, it's just, it's different for different people, I guess. But there's no, after those big hits of light happen to you, nobody tells you, hey, look, there's like this way that you thought before, and there's a new way that you're kind of thinking now. And the way that you thought before, at least for me, was not, you did not have any consideration at all or knew at all what you were even feeling or thinking or why. And now for some reason, when you're involved with people, you start observing that there are feelings of fear, of pain, of things that are disturbing to you. And you're actually aware that something's not right. But you're not really sure what's not right. You just know that it's not right. And I think that that happens because you know that there's something better, but you don't know what it is. But you know that it's there. It's just that you've never seen it before. So, yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna start with like this thing that's, so, okay, wait, first, subjective and objective. So how are we supposed to distinguish what is subjective and what's objective? So before, during, at the early stages of the awakening process, I want to say that you can't really distinguish, or like when you're starting to open your eyes, you can't really distinguish what's subjective and what's objective. And then at some point you start noticing like, wait, I'm having a subjective experience, but then there's all these other people around you, and you're like, at least for me, it's like my ego has been like doing this thing where it's like, no, my experience is right, yours is wrong. So that's kind of funny because I get caught up in that, and then I'm like, wait, why do I feel so much hate or like pain or anger? Okay, so yeah, the first one is perception arising from hearsay, and I think the step from subjectivity to objectivity requires steps or jumps or the ability for you to exercise your mind to distinguish what level of perception you're actually seeing through your eyes. So the first one, perception arising from hearsay or from some sign which everyone may name as he pleases. 2 is perception arising from your experience, that is, from experience not yet classified by the intellect, and only so called because the given event has happened to take place, and we have no contradictory fact to set against it, so that it therefore remains unassailed in our mind. So things happen, but like, because they've never happened before, it's kind of like you don't really know what to do with that information. You're just like, oh, this happened and I learned something from it. And then 3, perception arising when the essence of one thing is inferred from another thing, but not adequately. This comes when from some effect we gather its cause, or when it is inferred from some general proposition that some property is always present. So when the essence of one thing isn't known adequately, when from some effect we gather its cause, or when it is inferred from some general proposition that some property is always present. So we mistakenly place something on our eyes and see through that lens as a cause of reality or something like that, when that's actually not true. And then 4 is, lastly, there is perception arising when a thing is perceived solely through its essence or through the knowledge of its proximate cause. So that's like when you just know. So I think that awakening has to do with that, those four levels of perception. I also think that awakening has to do with actually feeling your emotions and allowing yourself to feel them and not judge them. And I also think that awakening has a lot to do with just voicing what's in your mind. And you'll start to notice that everything and everyone around you is telling you some sort of information about yourself or about themselves. And you kind of start seeing how certain people operate and how you operate. There's this guy who wrote another book. His name is Neville Goddard. And something that he says is that everyone is you pushed out. And I believe that. I mean, if we're all one, and the universe is experiencing itself through you and through anybody else here, because it's becoming conscious of itself, of course it would be in a different life form and in a different being. Something that just occurred to me while I was talking. What was it? It went away. Yeah, but I guess what I have to say is, like, I wonder if it's possible to be, I mean, of course I know it's possible, but I just wonder if there could ever be groups of people who would be willing to make something happen. There is, but I mean, that saying how it's like, you gotta put your own mask on before you save someone else. That's kind of like how I feel. I'm like, I have ideas, but, well, actually just one idea, which isn't all that elaborate, but, I really think people could learn to be self-sufficient right now, and that would actually help in creating something different in the world. But I think the question that I would have to ask myself in terms of making that happen is like, how independent can I be? And do I really want to depend on the current system? I wouldn't want to, but at the moment I am. And I feel like it takes a lot of strength and fortitude to like be a person who's gonna make themselves independent. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Oh, I guess something else that one more thing maybe. So we're all playing a game, right? And it's like, whose rules do you want to play by? At the moment, I feel like we're playing under someone else's rules. And the way that this game, or part of the way that this game is played, is by manipulating for control. Because whenever we do something, we're just trying to get control over something, whether we see it or not. I could be wrong too, but I think behaviors say a lot. And expression is important. So, all right. Good night.